Oh, you're looking at the top of my Argon 18 dark matter, which is 6 years old with Shimano GRX on it. It's got a power meter, double chain ring, but I've hacked it with an 1140 in the back thanks to Wolf Tooth and their Goat Link. It's great. Huge gear range, everything. But like any person that likes N+1, I'm looking for a new gravel bike. And it's really exciting to see that SRAM has come out with more options right now with the release of their new Force and Rival 2x12 and 1x13 options. And they're great. Everyone will agree that they've got the industry best hoods now. They've got the best braking. And also the engineers at SRAM are pretty brilliant because they've gotten rid of the need for a bin full of dropouts on every bike you got. And they've even gotten rid of the dropout. Although people will argue the other way if you're in the Shimano camp that it's better to break your hanger than to break your derailleur. And if you look at the prices of the replacement parts, trust me, you might be in that camp too. But with all this excitement, we've gotten rid of, this is a wrecked GX derailleur, we've gotten rid of the B-tension screw and the stop limits, high and low, on these new derailleurs. Well, that's great. I believe that there's one flaw in everything they engineered, which at this point leaves me a little bit in turmoil on whether or not I want to get either the Force or Rival XPLR with an 11x13. And that is the topic for this opinion video. I'm in the process of rebuilding this GRX drivetrain right now. I've got to put a new cable on. Then I'll have to redo all the tension screws, all that fancy stuff. It's really tempting just to be able to bolt something on and be done with it and then spend 2 minutes aligning it. But I'll point out to people that usually you're either getting your mechanic to do this or this will take you the whole process with the internal cable routing, which is a royal pain in the ass, about an hour, and then it's done. This front derailleur, since I've got it adjusted about 6 years ago, I haven't touched it. Unfortunately, I probably have to replace the chain rings on this. Just like you, since the release of XPLR, I've watched a ton of videos from such celebrities as Ben Delaney, Guy Kesteven, David Arthur, and Jim Ross, along with reviewing some older videos on the Red by the gravel cyclists. And I think there's some clear bias when I review these videos. I don't mean anything untoward. Try not to get all math and statistical on you, but fitness biased is if I take the sample of all cyclists that are going to buy either the Force or Rival group, that's a representative sample. Now, let's take a look at the fitness distribution on this of the influencers and YouTubers that have reviewed this group. They plot right about here. Basically, they are way fitter than the average person buying this group.
Go and look at a whole bunch of the videos that I've attached in the links down below. As an example, I'm going to call out Ben Delaney. In his video, he's like, ooh, I'm a 49-year-old dad, you know. But the internet knows the truth. The guy finished 32nd of 1,202 contestants at the Unbound Gravel in the 100-mile open men's category. This guy is super fit. And you can do the same with the rest of them. But go watch their videos too. It's not like they're comfortably talking when they're riding these bikes in a lot of cases. Like Guy Kesteven, he's breathing hard. And I believe the Velo guy, Jim Ross, he's breathing hard too. Like I said, these guys ride bikes professionally. They are way fitter than you. So how are you going to do on the same slopes? Because I can assure you, they're in their granny gear. The second type of bias, which could exist here, is called reciprocation bias. You ever been to the grocery store and someone gives you a sample, let's say of chips or something? A lot of the times you'll actually buy the product if you like it because you feel obligated because they've given you something for free. It's no different with an influencer and say a trip to Portugal to ride bikes and review products, or an influencer being able to sit down with, let's say, the chief product designer of SRAM for an interview. The third bias would be location or geographic bias, where your opinions reflect your riding area. An example of this outside of gravel would be GC Performance. You'll notice that he'll slap a 1x in SL8. But of course, like if you brought him here, he'd have a 2x pretty quick, I'm sure, where I live. The example in gravel would be the gravel cyclist. If you go and look at his review of Red, he suggests that maybe a 1036 cassette would be best for riders rather than the 1046, just because he lives in a predominantly flat area. I can suggest you, I'd go the other way.
Welcome to the whiteboard for some concepts. The first thing is gear ratio. So picture you have a front chainring and a rear cog. If they're equal in size, and it doesn't matter how many teeth they have, your gear ratio is 1. So what happens is every time you turn the crank a revolution, the rear wheel turns 1 revolution. Looking at SRAM's website, for force arrival, your front cog is either going to be a 42 or a 40. Your rear cog, of course, there's only one option, which is a 1046. So the way you can make yourself go faster or slower on these bikes is by, the only thing you can do is adjust your front chainring. So regardless, the range of gears you have is equal to your largest cog divided by your smallest cog. So in the case, no matter what you do with your front chainring, you're always going to have a 460% range. Your high gear, let's just take the 40 as an example. Your gear ratio would be 4 for your highest gear, meaning that for every crank turn you do, your wheel turns 4 times. And then when you're on the hills, I believe it works out to 0.86. So basically, for every crank turn you got, your wheel turns about, let's say, 5/6 of a revolution. If we look at my hacked 2x11 GRX, I've got a 4831 front combo and a 4011 rear cog, which means that my ratios are in the top gear 4.36 and in the bottom gear a minuscule 0.78, which means if I divide these out, my range is a whopping 560% as compared to Explorer's 460%. Now let's look at a non-hacked force 2x12. In the wide range, you can get a 4330 front chainring set, and in the rear, you get a 1036. So what this means is your top range, of course, is 4.3 for the ratio, and for the bottom, it's 0.83, which gives you a total range of 520%. So as I said before, my hacked GRX gives you 560%. The standard force gives you 520%. And maybe that should say farce. But on the 11 by 13 force, Explorer, you end up with 460%. There's also another option where what you can do is with the same great shifters and braking, you can go by a 1 by 12 and you have a 1052 cog, which means that once again you have 520%. The issue with this is that you have some pretty big jumps in your gears that the pros like to complain about, or the pundits. The issue with Explore is that assume the perfect world of 520% range is what you want. Because you've only got a 460% range, you're either going to have to favor having a smaller front chainring, which means you can climb better, or having a larger chainring, which means you can push the big gear and be in a pace line better. What most manufacturers do is they hit this mid-range, let's call it. So the bottom line is most people, and especially overweight cyclists like myself, no longer have a bailout or a granny gear down here.
I had done all these calculations and was going to bore you to death presenting them, but I decided instead to do an actual field test. The first scenario that I'm going to do simulates if I had an Explorer with a brand new 40 times 52 rear cog. Of course, it doesn't exist right now.
So this is round one on a steep slope. I'm in my smallest gear, which would be, I believe, a 42 in the front, 52 rear, putting out 300 watts. And I can tell you right now, if this lasted for any distance, this is going to be work.
The second scenario simulates if I had a currently available 40 times 46 gearing on my axis.
Now, I'm going to do the same hill, one gear down. I believe the grade on this slope is around 14%. So, to maintain a cadence between 70 and 80, I'm putting out between 400 and 500 watts. I don't think this would be sustainable for a while. If I slow it down to 70, about 350.
A second trial in my hacked gears, simulating the exact same gear ratio as an Explorer 40 times 46.
So to maintain 70 RPM in that gear, I'm at around 340 watts. If I want to do 90, I'm at 500. Now, I'm just going to shift down Oh, I couldn't take that for long.
In this final run, I thought that I was simulating the gravel cyclist's 36 tooth rear cog, but in actual fact, I had to shift it down one more gear. So I was in my 31 tooth cog as opposed to make the equivalent gear to the gravel cyclist, I would have had to been in my 27 tooth cog. But I think you get the point about how hard it is when you get into 10% plus grades with this limited gearing.
Now I'm in a 3127, which is the equivalent, I believe, of a 4216, or pardon me, 4236 the gravel cyclist wants. And to maintain 70 RPM, I'm at roughly 430 watts. 90 is somewhere around 560. Now I'm going to bail that out. My entire point here is the average dude is, at least in my region, has exactly no chance of not riding on the rivet with SRAM's gearing, especially if you want a top end gear for fast pace lines. Is at this point, it's calmed down to 10%, is that I exactly don't give a flip right now about whether or not my derailleur has a B tension or a high-low screw. I don't care whether I have 13 speeds. I don't care about my cassette ratio. I just don't want to die. Or the most emasculating thing around is having to ride a hill switchbacked, which unfortunately happens sometimes, or having to take a break. Generally not good. So for most of us, I don't think a 42, 46 is such a great gear, especially if you ride in the mountains. So my recommendation is, if you're getting an Explorer group set and you're an average dude like me and you live in the mountains, is get yourself a 38 tooth front cog to go with that 1046 rear and just take a break on the downhills. Otherwise, SRAM, if you're listening, maybe what you could do is sell some fancy aftermarket derailleur cages so you don't have to adjust your derailleur RL and come up with a 13-speed 1052. I think that's, for your average cyclist, the way to go. Particularly considering the fact that, yeah, your red group is for racers, but Force and particularly Rival should be for the common folk who want to enjoy gravel rather than tearing their knees off.
Bringing this home. SRAM, great job on the engineering. I disagree with you a little bit on the application. So with that, if you got a comment or a question, or you simply want to body shame me or fitness shame me, leave a comment down below. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you soon. And of course, ride hard.